welcome to Sidereal Insights Astro Update for June 17th, 2019. I'm 𝘱𝘍𝘢. I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick, Physick, Astrology, and I use Western Sidereal astrology on this broadcast and in my practice. The idea is really as a way to help you kind of reconnect with your soul purpose and remember why you came to begin with. Give me just one moment. I'm going to refresh my browser in case there are questions from anyone joining us live. I want to have the feed pulled up. And we'll dive right in. Are you excited about the full moon? I think I am now that I already did my releasing practice. I feel better. Hopefully, if you haven't done yours, you're ready to do it this afternoon or this evening or whenever fits with your schedule. But welcome to Sidereal Insights. So every 2 weeks on the broadcast, what we do is we explore the astrology of the current planetary transits across the heavens from a Western sidereal perspective. And so for the degrees that we're going to be looking at in this broadcast, it's important that you are working from a Fagan Bradley sidereal natal chart. So I'm going to drop a link to the free online chart calculator in the comments, and that way if you need to look up your chart, you can do that. So there you go. And so really my aim with the broadcast is to provide guidance on how we can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to really affect our lives in a positive way. And so thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to like and share the broadcast. Tag a friend if you know someone who might be interested in what we're talking about today. And you can also follow Mystick Physick Astrology on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way you don't ever miss a broadcast. So today we're talking about current outer planet retrogrades and some retrograde activity coming up later this month and into next month. We're going to kind of recap what that's about. We're going to talk a little bit about the full moon in Sagittarius, and we're also going to explore the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Cancer that's going to be hitting us next month in July. And we're going to be talking about that now because Mercury's entering the shadow period of that retrograde before the end of the month. So we're really going to actually be feeling it before it arrives in July. And so this will give you an opportunity to kind of prep for that. But let's kind of dive into where we're at. So right now we have Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio. We have Saturn and Pluto both retrograde in Sagittarius. And so it's kind of felt for some folks like we're moving backwards or just like slugging through mud, not making very much progress in a lot of different areas of life. And we're feeling this not only in the houses that Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter are moving through currently in our charts through their transits of Scorpio and Sagittarius, but we're also feeling that in relation to the houses that they rule natally for us as well. So it's kind of a couple different ways that this can manifest for us. Later this month, we're going to have Neptune join that mix, right? We're going to have Neptune retrograding in Sidereal Aquarius on June 21st. That's the day after Mercury enters the shadow of his retrograde in Sidereal Cancer. He'll still be in Gemini at the time, Mercury will be, but he'll be moving into Cancer before he begins the retrograde. And so we're going to feel that retrograde of Mercury in Cancer to some degree and in Gemini to some degree. And so you'll want to be really familiar with the houses that Cancer and Gemini occupy in your natal chart so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect. But more importantly, so you can plan how you want to tap into Mercury retrograde next month so that you can leverage that activity and make it work for you rather than against you. Okay? So Jupiter's retrograde, we've talked about this a couple times now on the broadcast. Jupiter's retrograde is really a chance for a do-over, right? It's a chance to go back to something that you've been working on and get it right, for lack of a better explanation. So having a closer look at activities that are going on in your house or in your natal chart in Scorpio and in your Jupiter-ruled houses in your natal chart, that's going to kind of clue you in as to what areas of life you can really tap into this opportunity for a do-over. Saturn's retrograde in Sagittarius, this is when Saturn retrogrades, is really more of an opportunity to go back and address outstanding obligations or commitments that we have not yet dealt with, addressed, met. So use this as an opportunity there to really go back and deal with something that's on your plate, where you have an obligation, whether it's to someone else in your life or to something else in your life. Get it done, get it off your shoulders, and that way when Saturn moves direct, you'll be ready to move forward. And then with Pluto retrograde in the same sign, so Pluto's retrograde is an opportunity to kind of dive deep and do some inner healing and transformation. This is really with Pluto retrograde, an opportunity for a little bit of maybe some inner psychological work, some shadow work, some healing work, addressing where we have wounds that we need to work on for our own benefit and for the benefit of the people in our lives that we interact with, okay? But thinking specifically about your plans for Mercury's retrograde, I want you to break out your survival guides. Now is the time to be using your Mercury retrograde survival guide. So if you have purchased that in the past, get it out. You're going to need it, right? Have a look at what houses Gemini and Cancer are occupying in your sidereal natal chart and read up on what my suggestions are for how you can actively use Mercury's retrograde in those houses to clean house, right? Declutter, rework things that might not be working for you. Okay, so you can use that constructively, and I guarantee you, once you really kind of tap into using Mercury retrograde constructively, you actually kind of start looking forward to when Mercury is going to be retrograde. Little known secret right there. Instead of dreading it, you can look forward to it and anticipate it. We also have eclipse season upon us. We're getting closer, so I don't know if you can kind of feel the heat and the tension ramping up here. I feel like I can. We're within the applying orb, you could say, of the third set of eclipses in the Gemini Sagittarius series that's going to accumulate July of 2020. So this began July of last year. We'll have the final eclipse in this series next summer, I believe. July 4th might be the last one. I'll have to double check the date of the last eclipse in that series. We do have an eclipse on July 4th of next year. I know that. Some of you might be receiving eclipse news right now. So I want to call this out. The 14th and the 15th of June are dates that I identified in my blog post about the July 2019 eclipse season. So if you have a planet or point near 29 degrees of an air or fire sign, now's the time to have your radar up, right? So pay attention. Something significant may have happened in the last couple of days, or you may have had information revealed to you or come to light even yesterday with our Jupiter-Neptune square, right? So this information is going to be helpful for you as you plan your forward direction. So you're going to be also wanting to watch for more news from this eclipse series in the coming months, because we'll be feeling the effect of these eclipses through early September. So they're not done with us. We haven't even got to July yet when they happen. So watch for more news from this series, right? That as these eclipses take place, it's going to move those of us who are affected by them kind of further through the process of change that eclipses tend to bring, right? And so you'll want to watch the video that I did on the 2019 eclipses, the critical dates and degrees, and you may want to watch the 3 important eclipse essentials you need to know video as well, because that kind of just gives you some general guidance on how you can navigate eclipse season. There's some important things to keep in mind, but I'll give you, here is the link for the blog post on the dates and degrees, using, of course, your Fagan Bradley sidereal natal chart. That's what you'll want to check it against. Don't check it against anything else because the degrees won't match, right? And then also, let me see, I think I have the link for, yes, Eclipse Essentials. Let me get that for you. I didn't make it easy to copy, so here we go. And I'll include these, if you're catching from YouTube, I'll include these in the video description on YouTube as well, so that you have them handy if you need to go brush up on those topics. We'll go back to where we were on the broadcast. So current transits, right now we have Venus and Taurus for a little bit longer, through the 29th. Venus in Taurus is really an opportunity to just like take pleasure in life, right? In the things that we enjoy. We generally kind of want to experience like a slower pace to life when Venus is in Taurus, and just kind of savor and find enjoyment in our activities and things like that. And that's perfectly fine. There's not really a lot else to do constructively right now with the retrograde activity that we have going on, and with this full moon and the next full moon kind of being a little sticky. just kick back and relax, enjoy life, take a slower pace to things. That's really the best strategy for moving forward. And don't force things. If you don't have anything that you absolutely have to be wrapping up right now, shelve it until a later date. This is not an ideal full moon. Next month is also not an ideal full moon, but keeping in mind that because we are in eclipse season and eclipses have, you know, a longer term effect, you can take what you may need to be wrapping up during the full moons in Sagittarius this month and next month and bump them if you need to for another month after, until we have a little bit more favorable circumstances, astrologically speaking, to work with. This full moon is kind of tense, also kind of ambiguous. And our next full moon, we're going to have Mercury retrograde plus an eclipse. And so neither one are really kind of ideal times to be trying to force your way through on something, especially if it's something important. So if it's important but not urgent, take a breather. Okay. We have Mars in Gemini right now. That started the 8th of May, only until June 23rd are we going to have Mars in Gemini. He'll move on to Cancer. So if you're feeling kind of restless, kind of fidgety, kind of anxious, this is why you can channel that energy into physical activity, especially into things that keep your hands busy if you need to. But that effect will last through the 23rd, and then we'll see Mars move into sidereal Cancer. And we have the Sun right now in sidereal Gemini as well. The Sun just slipped into Gemini yesterday. This is, of course, a 4-week annual transit. Kind of focusing the spotlight on the flow of information, the flow of communication, on people, goods and services, knowledge of all kinds through next month. And so that's really where our heads are mostly going to be at. Right now with the full moon, I want to talk about this full moon a little bit and just kind of go over why it's such a sticky, tricky full moon. Jupiter, of course, ruling. Jupiter being in Scorpio, we have a square aspect to Neptune going on. And so what that really suggests is that the final outcome of anything that might be being wrapped up right now, or anything that you might be kind of giving birth to right now, may not be immediately clear. It may be some time down the road before the final outcome of whatever this is right now that you have going on really kind of takes shape or makes itself clearly understood or clearly known. So just be aware of that, and be aware that if you were to kick the can until next month with Mercury retrograde, anything that you might be finalizing then is probably going to come back up for some revision down the road. So this is kind of the dynamic that we're dealing with at this full moon and the next full moon, and I just want you to be aware of that as you make your plans. And if you need a consult to figure out how to approach whatever it is you're working on that you might be finishing up, that may be the best way to figure out which full moon is the best for you to take action at, is just to have a consult so it can be looked at in the context of your own personal chart and your own personal planetary placements, your own house rulerships. That can make a big difference in what type of advice may be best for you. But right now with this full moon, just going into it, we had some opposition energy from Mars to Saturn retrograde and Mercury to Saturn retrograde, causing a little bit of tension, especially around delays or obstacles, frustrated activities, not being able to move forward. And then just after the full moon, we're going to have those same two planets, Mars and Mercury, meeting in conjunction and then opposing Pluto. Right? So you can see how this issue with tension, there's a potential for conflict as well with Mars involved in the oppositions, and power struggles with Pluto involved. And so this can be very challenging to kind of navigate. Really what it means right now is that we're going through this tense time at the full moon while all of us, both individually and collectively, are feeling the cumulative influence of the outer planet retrogrades and the upcoming July eclipses. So this all kind of combines to create very much a state of flux, a state of uncertainty, and like I said, a state of tension. And we might tend to be reactionary, we might tend to be confrontational, we might tend to get involved in power plays or attempts at manipulating one another, and none of that is constructive or helpful. So if you can just kind of hold tight and be patient, and try not to force your way through, that's really the best course of action. But due to this conjunction opposition dynamic that we have going on between Mars and Mercury on one hand and Saturn and Pluto on the other, it's not a time to force things. So if you're experiencing obstacles or slowdowns or uncertainty, try to approach things with an open mind, a receptive attitude. Allow yourself to be open to alternate possible solutions or ways forward as much as possible. Try not to let yourself get attached to a particular idea about the way things ought to be or the way they should proceed. And keep in mind that if you attempt to force things, or if you attempt to impose your will, that's really risky and it could lead to disappointment in the long run. So just be careful and be aware. The better course of action is to really just take some time to observe, understand what is, like I said in the June overview and short reports, and then get clear about what you want. Because really the lesson for us is in the gap between what is and what we want. And so if we can take the time to observe and understand exactly where we are right now, and how is that different from where we want to be and what we really want out of life, the lesson, that the best nugget of wisdom is in that gap between those two. And instead, just slow down, at least for a little bit longer, and do what Venus suggests, which is relax and enjoy yourself, right? Don't forget, like I said, to watch for news from the July eclipses, especially around the full moon. You might be noticing, like I said, tension in the houses that the July eclipses will activate for you, and that is totally normal. Should be mostly over by the end of August, so just kind of hold tight a little bit longer. The end of August, early September, those July eclipses will have run their course. And so we'll know what we're dealing with, we'll understand our situation and our circumstances a little bit better by then, and we'll likely have a better plan for moving forward. It's not the time to make important decisions right now, okay? Just hold tight. But be sure, like I said, to watch those videos, the three important eclipse essentials that you need to know, and the 2019 July eclipse critical dates and degrees. Later this month, once we come out of the full moon, we have a few sign changes going on, but keep in mind, like I said, with the full moon, if you need to stall, stall. Okay, don't force anything through. Don't take important decisions. Don't make significant courses of action. If what you're working on is important but not urgent, wait until later to come back to it. Okay, just let whatever information or news might be coming to light come to light right now, and then let that factor into your decision later on. Okay, we have a powerful opportunity with this full moon to transform our thinking around whatever problem or situation or circumstance we're facing, especially related to the house that Sagittarius occupies in our chart. Okay, or in relation to the Gemini-Sagittarius axis as a whole, depending on how you yourself are feeling it. It's an opportunity to really change your mind, or to see an issue that you may be dealing with in a new light. And if you can see it in a new light, you may open yourself to other possible solutions or possible ways forward. So even though it may not be the best time to take action or the best time to make a decision, there is a nice little nugget of goodness in it. So tap into that as an opportunity to really transform your thinking or to see something in a new light. Okay. And then what else do we have? On the 20th, like I said, Mercury is entering his retrograde shadow. If you have your planner, you know that. If you don't have the Ultimate Astrological Planner, make a note on June 20th. That's when Mercury is entering the shadow of his retrograde in Cancer. He will begin that retrograde July 8th. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it with the July overview and short reports. But you'll want to know about it right now. Right now, you're in a good time to prepare. Before the 20th, you'll want to wrap up any really critical or short-term important Mercury ruled activities. Once we hit the 20th, you'll want to kind of stay away from that. That's really when it's time to start preparing for the retrograde by backing up your data, any kind of prep work where you can preserve things that are at risk of being potentially lost, especially where it has to do with data and electronics and communication. Use the shadow period before July 8th to get prepped for that, so that once the retrograde arrives, if you have Mercury shenanigans crop up in your life, you're prepared, right? So now's the time to be taking care of that business. But like I said, if you have any contracts to sign or big ticket purchases to make, automobiles, electronics, things like that, do it now before we hit the shadow, okay? That's coming up on the 20th. And if you need a refresher on what Mercury retrograde is all about, I'm going to drop a link. I didn't make it easy to cut and paste again. I'm going to have to fix that. So this is a link to the Mercury retrograde survival guide on the Mystick Physick blog. That way, if you need a refresher, you can refresh yourself. And that will also lead you to the full guide, the full 33-page guide, if you want to buy a copy of that. It's expanded, gives you a little more detail, plus you'll be using it 3 to 4 times a year every time Mercury goes retrograde. Okay? So Mercury is going to move into Cancer on the 21st, just after he enters the shadow of his retrograde. Okay? Mercury moving into Cancer is going to be an exceptionally long transit for us this year. Mercury is normally in a sign for about 2.5 or 3 weeks, depending where he's at in his orbit. In Cancer, he's going to be for 9.5 weeks. So that's a longer term Mercury transit, being his second retrograde of the year. So if you are Cancer Sun or Cancer Rising, pay attention, because you are going to feel that. It'll probably affect you much more than it may affect other people, with the exception of those of us who have Virgo or Gemini Sun or Rising. We'll get to enjoy Mercury's retrograde in Cancer as well. But Mercury retrograde is one that more people tend to feel a little bit more personally. And I just want to call out Cancer Sun and Cancer Rising. You're ruled by the moon, so you might not think that Mercury retrogrades would affect you that much, but where he's going to be retrograde in your sign, it's an opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself in a way. So consider that. If that's something that you've been thinking about doing, Mercury retrograde is a chance to kind of find a new you in a way. Okay. We also have Mars entering Cancer just a few days after that, on the 23rd, I believe. And he'll be in Cancer until early September. Mercury and Mars will be in Cancer together for that long stretch of time. Okay. So if you have plans to use Mercury's retrograde in Cancer in alignment with your natal blueprint, Mars's presence there is going to help give you some energy and some drive to make that happen. But plan to include regular periods for rest, because that lunar influence on Mars can make your energy levels fluctuate much more frequently when Mars is in Cancer. Okay, so that's a little caveat there. And then at the end of the month, we're going to have Venus moving into Gemini. So she'll join the Sun there for about a 3.5 week long visit in time to grace us with her presence for the solar eclipse on July 2nd. And we'll talk more about that once we get to July. If you missed me live yesterday, it's the full moon today. It's the perfect time for your full moon in Sagittarius releasing practice. Remember, it's most powerful if you can do it the day of or even the day after, but you do have 10 days to do your releasing practice. I'm going to drop a link to the broadcast on the website in case you haven't done your releasing practice. Feel free, jump in. The videos are up and ready. I hope that's the right link. There it is, sure is. And be sure to catch the June overview and short reports. We're a little past halfway through the month. If you haven't read them already, or if you did and you want a refresher, that's worth a moment to kind of recap, especially as we're moving into Mercury retrograde season. And don't forget that you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you do that, you may want to click on the notification bell, so that the little icon, so that you get notifications when a new video is posted to the channel, which there'll be one going up later today. If you didn't catch this live, you can catch the replay on YouTube. But thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for watching, and be sure and like and share this broadcast if you get anything out of it, and we'll talk to you again next time. Bye.